You know what to do.
Welcome to the film cast review of Juror number 2, the newest film by Clint Eastwood. Here's the plot summary from the movie on the internet. Quote, a juror for a high-profile murder trial finds himself struggling with a serious moral dilemma that could influence the verdict and potentially convict or free the accused killer. Now, end quote. Now, I just want to say the premise of this movie has been part of the marketing. It's in the trailer. It's all over the place. So we're going to reveal what the premise of the movie is, which is, so I'm going to say it right now, which is that it becomes clear to juror number 2 that he is the one that may have committed the crime he is currently serving as a juror for. I just want to say, by the way, like, I knew that going in, and I was shocked at how quickly and efficiently the movie conveys that concept.
It does a lot of things
in the first
quickly
like
and
12
efficiently.
minutes. It's already like explained all that to you.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay,
If
I'm like,
quick and efficient is what you're looking for.
Yep.
Devindra Hardawar, I am really curious. You've been much more positive on the Clint Eastwood like later in life works than I have
I
been.
don't say overly. I'm just saying I like Sully. I think Sully's a good movie.
Yeah.
So
what did you think of Juror number 2?
I think it's a really good script. I think it's a really interesting moral dilemma. Like a great performance by Nicholas Hoult, Toni Collette, just having a lot of fun being a Southern lawyer. Also fun to see like something shot in Savannah. So I just like love the vibes here. This is a really interesting courtroom thriller, which I think is only held back by the way that Clint Eastwood makes movies these days, which is essentially you're in and you're out. A lot of scenes, you're in and you're out.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Got no time for anything. Let's have a backyard party to sell it. Let's have a baby shower that'll last 10 seconds. Introduce the whole, like, you're just in and out of so many scenes where I feel like I'm trying to breathe in this world. I'm trying to get some texture of something. And this movie is so choppy in ways I find to be kind of hilarious. It just feels like, I don't feel like they would let any other director kind of construct a movie like this, or at least like, hey, let's get more coverage, get something. Like, let me just exist in this world a little. So I feel like it is hampered a little by the way he's basically conducting scenes. I don't think it's particularly.
Let's just be clear, right? Like, I'm reading here from Collider. Quote, I have a reputation for always going with the first or second take.
You can tell.
The objective is to make everything sound like the first time it's said.
Yep.
So the only thing I can do is to try to pick it up from the very first time it is said. You'd be surprised with good performers how interesting something can be the first time they try it, end quote. So, and his stuff never runs over budget. It's never over schedule. He just gets it done. He's extremely efficient as a filmmaker. So anyway.
In bed by 6.
Yep, absolutely.
Tight and efficient. I feel like it hampers this script, like this story could have been something that's even more cinematic, even more compelling if it had like room to breathe. But this movie does not take a minute to pause to take a breath or anything. And I think that just really hurts this thing. So yeah, beyond that, I think when it slows down in some of the courtroom scenes and where you're focusing on these characters and like some really great, like there's some great work happening with these actors. When the movie takes time to slow down, it's good. I just wish he was always doing that. Also, Kiefer Sutherland is here for some reason.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Fun. Yeah.
All right, Jeff Kanata, I'm so interested in what you thought of this movie, Juror number 2.
You know what I love about the film cast, Dave? It's the wide variety of opinions that we get, where we have 3 guys who marginally respect each other. Can present difference of opinions.
I also love this, and in fact, I may have
Jeff wrote this down before Dave said that in this episode.
Jeff was gonna say this already before I gave my speech earlier on in the podcast.
That's right. If you want to have a room and line up all the movies that I saw on the wall in a line and ask me which I'd like to see again, actually, I should say my feelings about Juror number 2 are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
All right, let's hear it, Jeff.
Every subtext overtly explained. The premise is truly harebrained. I knew when I heard it that I'd reached a verdict. It's guilty of being inane.
Oh, wow.
I watched Juror number 2 with my wife, and I lost count of the number of times that both of us exclaimed, "You have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me," to this movie.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to spoil anything, but J.K. Simmons is in this movie.
Yep, he is.
And I cannot believe the audacity of the role that they put him in. This movie, the idea of the guy who did it being on the jury and having this moral dilemma of, I have the perfect way to just pin this on somebody else and get away with it forever, or do I do the morally responsible thing and take responsibility for what I've done and not let this innocent person, suffer for what I've done? That is an incredible, tasty premise. But the way this movie contrives constantly to get itself into that position and then does absolutely nothing with it and does not make I want to see that main character absolutely squirm and have to actually wrestle with these decisions and actually have to do something. At no point did this movie make him do anything. Kiefer Sutherland plays exposition man. Everyone in this movie just says the subtext. We don't, like you said, Devindra, anybody got time for it. For subtlety. We don't got time for thinking. We don't trust the audience at all in this movie. Every single person. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland literally is there to say to our main character, sorry, you can't leave this trial. I know you want to leave the trial. You can't. Arbitrary. The judge in this movie says no fewer than 3 or 4 times, well, that's highly unusual and it's never been done before in the history of judges, but I'll allow it. That would make this a kangaroo court. This just seems so preposterous that you would even. I'll allow it this time. This is the most preposterous series of events that continually happen, and the movie just keeps one-upping my incredulity. Even if I'm like, okay, I will strain my suspension of disbelief, and then it goes, no, guess what else? Guess what else you have to swallow, you idiot audience member? Guess what else? It's like Toni Collette literally, we can't have Toni Collette involved in this trial unless she has some stake in it. So, okay, we'll just throw in a line that says, hey, your reelection will swing 5 points by the outcome of this trial. Oh, okay, well, I guess she gives a shit. I want to get into spoilers to talk more specifically, but it is so preposterous what you are asked to swallow in this movie again and again and again and again. I just cannot believe that they made it. It's a really cool idea, but the execution is amateurish, in my opinion. It's
Jeff, I hear everything you're saying. I also think you don't watch enough legal TV shows because let me tell you how crazy it gets out there.
I agree. I'm like, what? This is like a very conventional, Law and Order episode.
Very subdued compared to what's out there.
But yeah, that maybe we've just heard an explanation for why Jeff doesn't watch police procedurals. Okay. So I love this movie. Okay. Wow, Jeff. We're really on opposite ends.
Wow.
On multiple counts. Yeah. This episode. I love this movie.
At least we can agree on the skeleton crew, David. We'll always have the skeleton crew.
We'll always have skeleton crew.
Yeah.
I love this movie, and the reason why, first of all, I think both of you have I'm more aligned with Devindra on this one, that the execution is very rote. Cinematically, it's not super interesting. There's a handful of interesting shots and moments. Mostly, I'm just impressed with how efficient the storytelling is, right? Which is, as Jeff has indicated, might not be a term that people value very much when it comes to their movies. But for me, I don't necessarily not value it. So anyway, that's one thing.
Why waste time when you can just have the characters say in one sentence exactly why they're there?
I think what this movie is, what's great about this film is two things, maybe three. Number one, it does a good job of capturing just how strange it is, this system we have where like normal human beings are invested with this power. Like it's both great and also obviously has some really serious flaws. Number two, it is an interesting moral puzzle where it puts you in the perspective of this guy, juror number two, and you're like, it asks you like, what would you do in this situation? You know, like it's very subjective movie of like, this is the protagonist, juror number two is the protagonist, and you're like with him in this battle of trying to figure out like, what would you do? And number three, I do think it actually has a lot to say about like who gets the benefit of the doubt in our justice system. You know, like whose perspective is more considered in our current justice system, and how like, yeah, the justice system has a lot of flaws, but like at the end of the day, it's the best one we have. And you know, how do we feel about that? So I think it's actually like a pretty profound film, and I loved how it ends, and we can talk about that momentarily. But I am a huge fan of Juror number two, and think it is worth checking out. So anyway, let's get to spoilers for Juror number two starting right now. Jeff, you kind of like sighed there a little bit when we moved to spoilers. Are you just like, what was that reaction?
I feel like we watched different movies.
Listen, this is me during the Borderlands review, Jeff, which also happened this year. So
yeah, you're right.
Listen, we all have our moments.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, do you want to go off on your rant first, or shall I? Shall I start? Why don't you go off on your rant, and then we'll end with my positive notes on the movie. Yeah, I think that'll be good, right?
I sort of lost my will to live. We've got a jury with like all of the perfect people for that particular situation that just happen to all make it onto the jury.
But enough about 12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Well, I'm just saying.
Don't even compare this movie to 12 Angry Men.
It's just not uncommon to have. Yeah. It's a very standard, like,
it's a narrative structure.
Yeah,
this movie, by the way, I just want to point this out there: 93% on Rotten Tomato, 91% Popcornometer, whatever that is.
Yes,
the audience score.
Yes, audience score. Yeah, people love this.
People love this, and it's wild. Yeah,
this is my complete unknown.
yeah, I guess. I mean, the moment where J.K. Simmons is like, I'm a private investigator, and then we also have a surgeon on the
medical student. It's like a
medical student. Yeah. I also have the exact knowledge we need for this exact situation.
I don't know if you know this, Jeff, but America is a beautiful tapestry, and
many people from all kinds of
varieties and backgrounds can end up on a jury. That's what makes being on juries kind of special.
I need you to explain to me at any point the motivating factor behind this judge. This judge who allows things in their courtroom and then both lawyers are like, well, I guess I just gotta, there's no mistrial here. I guess I'll just keep on trucking. It is so ridiculous how constantly the judge is like, well, I see no problem with that. It's the complete train wreck of a thing that just happened. But I'm sure we'll just continue on. There's no universe where any of that would happen.
There's a moment in the movie, like, and this happens in any like courtroom drama where the judge says, "This is highly unusual," and I agree. Whenever a movie does that, I lose some respect for it. That only really happened one time, and that's when they decide. That's when they visit the location where the crime took place after deliberations have begun. That would basically never happen. Right?
Never happen. Every time that someone stands up and tries to get out of the case, she's like, "Well, we're not going to let you get out of the case. No." And it's like,
I literally went through jury duty this year, and that's how it happens. Like it's that is how it takes. People like try to make up excuses to not be on it. And then the judge's like, well, guess what? Like, too bad. That's not a good excuse.
Tough
you know,
shit.
like, and that's
also
that's
the judge is a actor from Bosch.
Yeah, she's
and
awesome.
Has been on Good Fight and a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah,
but also, Jeff, I do think like I don't think this is what the movie really is intending to say. But there is this component of the movie where like, okay, something horribly disruptive happens in the middle of a trial, right? And it's like the judge's inclination is not, well, let's just throw out the trial. Like, it's like they're part of a machine that's designed to do one thing, which is arrive at a verdict. And again, I don't think this is like what the movie necessarily has in mind, but it's like, yeah, that's if something like really weird happened, the judge would be invested in making sure that the trial continued, right? And like you see some of that reflected in the movie.
But the movie is not interested in creating it's always at every turn going for the shortest distance between 2 points. It's always trying to do the least interesting version of that moment. It's always doing like, what's the shortcut version? What can the person just say to hand wave it away? Every single thing is just hand wave it away. Kiefer Sutherland is there to just like, oh, you can't leave. Sorry, you can't leave the trial. I got to stay with it. Why? Because the movie needs you to.
Well,
we got to keep on going. Why? Because the movie needs us to.
What he says, he answers a question that I think a lot of people in the audience would have. It's like, if I just like screw up this trial a little bit, can I make it so that he is not guilty,
right?
And I am not guilty? Is that a possibility?
Yes.
And I kind of appreciate that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question to solve.
And to me, his logic seemed pretty sound. Like, no, this is a pretty high profile case, and they will retry this case, and you're probably not going to get out of this. Basically.
Do you think that this movie pays off the moral quandary?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Devindra, you do?
I think it's interesting what it does. I think it's, it's not what I would do, but it's a person. Nicholas Holt's character is really interesting to me because he's somebody who basically has sort of redeemed himself. He has become the perfect husband, trying to be the perfect father, but was somebody who came out of like a really shitty alcoholic, zone, like whatever he was in before. And I think that it's fascinating to see him trying to hold on to that. I don't think like everything that happens in this movie is realistic, but I just caught a couple of scenes of A Few Good Men on TV and like, that's a great movie. I don't think things will go down exactly like that.
A military tribunal would go down like that.
Yeah.
I think I can definitely agree with a lot of the critiques about the craft of the movie, but where I don't agree with the criticism is that like I don't agree with the criticism that the movie doesn't ask interesting questions or go to an interesting place. Because what is going on in this movie, as Devindra put it, is like, we have these two guys. One is innocent of the crime, like,
but a piece of garbage,
but
like
a piece of shit. The other guy is a good guy, but is guilty.
Right.
And it's like, whose opinion is privileged in our current system? And it's like, it's the guy who gets chosen to be on the jury. Like, he is the one that gets to decide. And like, how do we feel about that as society, that Nicholas Holt is the one that gets to decide, even though he's the one that did the crime? Like, how do we feel about our society that is the case?
And it's also like what he did. It's not like he maliciously killed this girl.
Right.
Like, to me, it seems like a very reasonable, rainy night, hard to see anything, person on the side of the road. He stops, he looks, he does not see anything.
Right.
Like, it's not like he ran away from the scene. It's like, I guess I hit a deer.
Right.
I guess I hit a dog or something. Like, what he does is very reasonable.
Right.
And like,
I love all that.
Yeah,
I love like, put us in that moral quandary and make us stew.
Yeah.
I don't think the movie does that. I never felt like it actually interrogates that situation. It just sort of like, he just sort of coasts along. Yes, he's the one that causes it not to be guilty immediately. Okay, that's cool. But then it just doesn't do anything with any of that, in my opinion. It doesn't it doesn't actually force him to make a decision. It just feels like he coasts through the end. And then it sort of has its cake and eats it too, because Toni Collette figures it out.
I mean, part of it may be due to the construction of this movie. I feel like if this movie had time to breathe, if this was like a Denis Villeneuve movie where you were in this atmosphere and like seeing him deal with these quandaries rather than jumping from scene to scene. I feel like in the span of 5 minutes, we jump from so many scenes and different characters, like things just keep rolling along and you don't have time to process what this movie is actually doing. Then it's easy to just like feel like, it's just not working. It did work for me, but I wish it was better constructed. I feel like the way Clint Eastwood made this movie does not really do this story justice, basically.
It could have been Anatomy of a Fall.
Sure. Yeah.
It could have been that.
Yeah, for sure.
And it isn't. It isn't even attempting to be that. It's like the word jumble on the placemat compared to Tolstoy. You know what I mean? Like it's so simplistic and so pat about literally everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's a few like really interesting moments. First of all, it's like everyone wants to convict this guy immediately. Right,
Yeah.
like there's a few interesting moments in the movie. Right, one is everyone wants to convict the guy immediately, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to use my power to try to prevent this from happening." Right, and then like, and which is a genuinely like moral act that he's
Mhm.
doing. And
Mhm.
then as time goes on, he realizes the impossibility of maintaining that position. He's basically like, "Oh, there's just going to be people that like will not change their mind." And by the way, like when I was a juror on this trial, that happened as well. It's like there were people who were like, "Hey, like I will on this specific charge, I am never going to be guilty or not guilty
Mm.
or whatever." And it's just like at some point, people arrive at the end of their reasoning on that, and that's like, and we have to deal with that as a society. We have to deal with that as a justice system. It's like that's what happened in this movie. This guy, one of his fellow jurors, was like, "Guess what? Like, you're never going to get me to vote not guilty." So it's like, what are you going to do?
But
It's like,
isn't that what a hung jury is?
Yeah, which is like in general like
He-
a very bad outcome for a trial.
Yeah.
And also like I guess they just like,
He was
okay,
trying
well,
to avoid the hung jury because they would
Right.
retrial.
it would
basically retrial.
yeah,
it.
potentially result in a
So it does
retrial.
not. It
Yeah.
does not stop him from potentially being seen as guilty again.
Right.
Basically.
I have to say one of my favorite moments from the movie, just as a funny thing that happened in the movie, was when J.K. Simmons is talking with Nicholas Hoult about the cars, and he's like, "Yeah, I like cross-reference these like 15 cars. By the way, one of them's yours." and then he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, so
Oh,
we can just
man.
cross it. We can just cross that
Let's
one out
cross it out.
immediately."
Cross
It's like,
it out.
I was like, that is hilarious. That's very funny. But I loved the ending of this movie because basically there's two scenes that constitute the end.
Mhm.
Nicholas Hoult and Toni Collette have a conversation where Toni Collette has clearly figured everything out, and Nicholas Holt's character says, you know,
Tough shit.
"Hey, you can come after me, but like it's gonna be bad for you too. Everyone's gonna lose, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm gonna lose
yeah.
my family. You're gonna look bad because you put an innocent person in jail. Like we're all gonna be bad. We're all better off if we just let this happen." And you think for one second that he's like gotten away with it, and that's the end. And then Toni Collette shows up at his door, and you don't know what she says next, but I have a feeling it's not going to be good. And my headcanon interpretation is obviously she's being like, "Hey, I'm choosing violence. Like I'm
She
choosing the
comes
option."
in with
Right.
flashing lights. So
Right.
yeah,
I'm choosing the option where you're going to jail, and I'm gonna look bad, and we're gonna correct this grave travesty of justice that has occurred. And I love that as a final message of like, hey, like it takes people like Toni Collette at the end of this movie to stand up and say, "Hey, we're not going to accept like a suboptimal outcome that makes everyone more comfortable."
Yeah.
So anyway,
that's how you know this is a fantasy, folks. That's how you know
absolutely
it's not real.
Oh, no argument there.
Because we live in a world where justice is distributed accurately and fairly, and nobody escapes the eye of the law.
So anyway, Jeff, that's my kind of the journey I went on.
I'm glad you liked it. I wish.
Yeah.
I part of the reason I'm so offended by this movie is because there's a kernel of something really interesting at the part of it.
I agree.
Yeah.
It could have been so much better.
It could have been so much better. And it truly was one of the stupidest experiences I've had watching a movie this year. I felt constantly insulted to have to swallow the suspension of disbelief over and over and over and over. Because it's
That's
like it's no small feat to to just orchestrate this situation. Like you gotta really go, okay, he just happened to be called as a juror for the thing that he did. Like that's already a massive coincidence, right? But that's where the movie starts asking you to accept things. Like there's so many coincidences. There's so many things where it's just like, wow, it just really lined up like this to create this dumb moment in the movie because you really wanted that dumb moment. And I think that's one of the things I am most perturbed by in any media, any storytelling is when it feels like I am being asked to my intelligence is not being respected enough to see through that. So this it really hit my particular bugaboo. So I put
feel
this
that.
at the
I
end
feel
of my
that.
line on the wall, David.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I feel like a lot of the stuff you're referring to is just normal courtroom drama storytelling. Like stuff we've seen in movies like 12 Angry Men, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
where like people bring in their outside expertise into the, like it just happens a lot. So maybe it's like I am more accepting of this style because I just have some affection for this genre more than to begin with, probably, right?
Maybe, but I think there's ways. I love a Few Good Men, for example, brought up by Devindra. I love a taut courtroom drama. My favorite movie of last year was Anatomy of a Fall. Like I love that when it's done deftly, when it feels like this movie is thinking about the smartest way it can accomplish all of those things, not the most efficient,
not the fastest way. Yeah,
yes,
basically. Yeah.
All right,
I agree.
That's fair. I think we've both had a chance to articulate our arguments about this movie, so I'm grateful for that.
I'm just not going to stay around and review Juror number 3. I'm sorry.
At the end of the day, it is really impressive that Clint Eastwood is still making movies, man.
That's for sure. Yeah,
quickly.
amazing.
Very quickly.
Indeed. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.